Okay, so let's talk today about how can we go through the design stage, the preparation stage. So last week we started talking about this example system, okay, simplified system that would try to answer the question how to find the trendsetters in Toronto particularly, okay? And this was the general plan. So what comes after that, if you have this general plan, you can try out the simple code that is provided by the API and see how would you be able to find the answer for your question, okay? So you can do that. So here's an attempt to find the trendsetters in Toronto using the YouTube data. Okay, so the steps that were mentioned, we started off with what Google provided as the call for its API, right? So we started by creating the request and then using the search as we found, as we discussed last time. So the thing is that it cannot find a topic. I mean, we cannot find a trending topic on YouTube. We need to find it somewhere else and then feed it to the YouTube. Okay, so this script is just the attempt of trying to find the answers from one branch in the diagram. Okay, so here's what happened. Okay, just call for the list function, and then that would create the request, and then when we execute the request, we'll get the response, and the response has the information that hopefully we need. Okay, but the search response comes only with a snippet part of the resource, which have the ID of the video but doesn't have the views, right? So we needed to have another call. So we needed to create another request based on the video ID. So we took the video ID from the response that we received and then create another request that brings up not a search resource, the video resource. Okay, so that allows us to get the snippet, content details, statistics. Well, statistics is really what we need because snippet we already had it, but we can reuse it if we want. Okay, now when we execute that request, we get the response that is more detailed information about each video. So here we take one video and get the information, more information about it in order to create the accumulated count of views, right? And mic is out again. All right. And the other piece of information that we need to get is the channel name. Now we have the channel ID as part that comes with the snippet, but we don't have the channel name. So for that, we needed to create another request. Now we could have created the request like this here, but a better organized way is to create a function that takes whatever we want to create in the request for and give us a channel name right away instead of having a request and then execute the response. Okay, so there is also attempt to organizing the code by creating this get name function that would create the request for the channel resource in order to give us a channel name. Okay, and then we accumulate the results in a dictionary and then find the top of them. Okay, so this is one part. Now that's one approach. You can just open a script and write your code there, like this. Now you see how many lines of code we have here? 72, about 71, not too bad. might be okay for that small scale. But when things get like larger in scale and you have multiple people working together, then putting everything in one file like this doesn't work. It doesn't scale. In addition to that, the fact that the manageability of the script itself, we are working with technology that is very frequently changing, right? Now, what you have on YouTube right now working, come back 3 months later, it might not be working or might need some changes. Now, you need to organize your code in a way that allow you to find what you need to change easy. Just that's one thing to begin with. And also allow you to separate the parts that don't need to change so that you don't touch it. Whenever you open the code, when you change it, there is a risk that you introduce. Okay, whenever you introduce any change, there is a risk that you're gonna break something. So you need to organize your code in a way that make the change easy to begin with to find what you need to change as easy as possible, and to separate the different parts as much as possible so that when you change one thing, you don't have to change everything, so that you minimize the risk. Okay, so one thing here, so there is an attempt to organize the code a little bit by creating this function, but there is, you can see there are 3 locations in which we create a request, a YouTube request, right? So there is one to get the channel, there is one to get the popular videos, and there is one to get the detailed video. Now, if the YouTube API changed and we need to change the way we create the request, we have to make sure to find every location where we create a request and changing there. And that's very risky. Okay, and that's why the object-oriented approach is becoming more and more popular, especially with the new, like the technology that is changing frequently. Because when you're organizing your code in an object-oriented manner, it makes the maintainability easier. It makes it easier to find where the code that you want to change is. And it makes it better to isolate the different parts of the code so that you minimize the risk. All right, so let's try to reorganize this. I mean, this is one approach, not necessarily this particular code. We have an idea what needs to be done, okay? And this is the general idea of the entire system, okay? Now find the trending topics, select one of the trending topics, and then start finding more information about it. And then there is the accumulation part. Okay, based on that knowledge, let's try to figure out what are the classes that would be needed in this kind of system. What do you think it would be a class? So now I want to add a class diagram to this, to Visio. So I can just click on more shapes and then go to software and database and then software again, and then use UML class. So now we're going to create a class diagram. Now, what could be classes that we would need for this system? I have an example, but we want to try it together first, and then I'll show you the example I prepared. So what could be a classes that would be needed here? Now, a class was like an entity that has attributes and code that runs on it, right? So I just mentioned that one thing that we have worked with is the YouTube data source. And we want to isolate that because it might, when it happened to change, we want to make that change in that one place, right? So we can have one class for the YouTube source or YouTube source. Okay, so what could be attributes for that based on the information that we find here? So at least there's the API key and there is the API version. Now the service name is YouTube. Unless there are sub-service under YouTube. So we can take these 1, 2, 3 as our attributes. Okay, because we need to send them to the build function anyways. So we need service name, API version, and API key. So we have service name, API version, and API. Now the API key, we don't expect it to change throughout the code, so we can put it in a constant. Okay, now what functions? Now, forget about the details of how to create a request and blah, blah, blah. These are things that would be inside the functions. So what kind of functions? So if we are to organize the code that we have for YouTube in a set of functions, what would they be?